Welcome to Unlocking My Potential, a podcast all about women in STEM sharing their stories, struggles, and the lessons that shape their paths. I'm Natalie, and I'm really glad to have you here today.
Hi, I'm Isabel Zimmerman. I'm a software engineer at Posit PBC. I work on different data science tools. I work in open source. I graduated from Florida Polytechnic University with my undergraduate degree in data science in 2021. I graduated again in 2023 with a master's in computer science. If I'm not typing away on GitHub, I'm probably hanging out with my dogs. I'm probably reading books. I'm a big crafter. Been really into like binding books recently, which has been really fun, giving everybody heart attacks, ripping the covers off my books so I can put them back together again. That's me.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited to have you here with us, honestly. I know you have such a diverse background with different undergrad and masters and different opportunities that you've had previously with internships and jobs. So just super excited to give you a space and an opportunity to share your whole beautiful story. I always like to start the podcast a little bit, going all the way to the beginning. So at what point you had the first little spark into the STEM world?
Okay, so I actually applied for colleges, and I applied to, I think, 3 or 4 different colleges with 3 or 4 completely different degrees. I really had no idea what I was doing. I think I applied for bioinformatics or some sort of biomedical engineering somewhere. I applied for finance somewhere else, and then I applied at Florida Poly for, at that point in time, it was not called data science. It was called, I think, advanced analytics or advanced technology or some really vague term because nobody knew what data science was yet. And I think I was really focused on kind of 3 main things. I wanted something that after college, I wanted to be employable. I wanted to not feel like I was going to have a big job search afterwards. And I wanted to have the ability to work across different industries. I had worked in a hospital before in direct patient care as a nurse's aide. I had worked for my dad's business when he does financy things. And I liked being able to see all ends of the spectrum. So I want to be employable. I want to be somewhere where I can work in a lot of different industries. And mostly I wanted somewhere that was not in the Midwest because I grew up in a cornfield, not literally, but kind of close. So going to Florida Poly, it seemed like data science was a great fit for both of those things. So I kind of fell into STEM on accident, and it wasn't until I was in it that I realized like, hey, this is really cool. And I've always liked numbers. I've always liked math, but I wasn't quite sure if it was going to look like coding or some other way to use these kind of skills.
That is so cool. I think your story is so unique already because I've never heard of anyone, to be honest, that applied for different universities with different programs. I love the whole different universities, yes, but different programs that are literally not the opposite, but finance to data analytics. It's a whole different world. And then the biotech is also so different. And I know all 3 of them you could have had, I guess, a lot of different opportunities depending on the job that you did. And all of them will have kind of the numbers aspect of it that you mentioned that you really liked. But I'm glad you went into Florida Poly. It was such a new university and small and everything in the beginning too. So you went from the Midwest in the middle of nowhere to kind of Florida in the middle of nowhere a little bit.
Yeah. Surprisingly, not as far out of my comfort zone. Florida Poly is just surrounded by, at this point in time, maybe that'll change, but by a lot of cows. Felt like I was right
Yeah.
at home, even though I was 1,000 miles away.
That's so funny. To me, that was one of the most like culture shocks going to Florida Poly was right next to the university. There's a fence and then there's cows right next to it, which is so funny. And I know now it looks so much different. The city's growing so much, but I'm really glad you ended up taking that path with a degree that will give you a lot of career opportunities, which is awesome. Within your university experience, so you joined Florida Poly, and I do think it was advanced data analytics because I graduated with a data analytics degree that I think right the next year became data science. I don't think my degree exists anymore or it just changed the name. So I think that's we probably graduated with the same thing, just a different name at this point.
That sounds about
That is so
right.
funny. Yeah, because they changed so much. But within your experience at Florida Poly, what were some of the things that you really liked about the university, the program that you're studying, some things that you didn't? Also, what were some different organizations, programs, and just experiences that you had at the university?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just now looking back the scope of my life so far. I just kind of like threw myself into everything and I figured the universe is going to give back to me or the things that I like are going to stick. So I was part of the Student Government Association. I worked on the Executive Board Sustainability Committee, which was mostly whatever random things we were making up, making sure people could grow plants in their dorm rooms. I think we gave out a lot of seed packets and working in the garden. There's a garden on the side of Florida Poly that I don't know if it still exists or not, but at one point I was growing a lot of food out there and you could go out there and grab kale and tomatoes and whatever. So I was in there. I was at part of the presidential ambassadors where it was kind of a leadership opportunity where I would give tours to different people who would visit the university, mostly to visit with the president, think about government officials or different business partnerships that the university is looking to make. I would be a student that would be on campus giving a tour. Helped out a little bit with esports, which was just kind of a fun event program. It meant I got to eat a lot of pizza at 3 a.m. with my friends. I was not an esports player. I was just really excited about like, these different communities within Florida Poly. So I kind of floated around all of those, but I think my main love was really this data science department. I know there was this, I think they called it DADS Club, like data analytics, data science. And there would be people who would come in and give talks to the data science students. And it was so interesting to see what people were doing out in the real world that I got to see in my classes. And I feel like Florida Poly, I believe at that point in time, again, the space changes very rapidly, but was one of the first places that had a data science degree and a data science department that wasn't just like a mishmash of a computer science department and a statistics department. And I think that was really interesting for me because it meant that I got very specialized information where, I learned about this beautiful programming language called R and this IDE called RStudio. And that was something that like very directly fed into my career later and really just learning about data science as its own entity and not as like a blend of computer science and mathematics, which it certainly is at some level, but having this sort of like dedicated program, I think was interesting. I was able to do things that you wouldn't normally see, I think, in a lot of these other programs like game theory, which was very different, and kind of stepping through thinking about the cause and effect of different programming styles or just a lot of this specialized information that I felt was super, super helpful for me when I kind of stepped into the world as this data scientist persona.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I knew about the group, the organization, the Dads group, because the name was just to me just so funny all the time. But you're super right. I do have a lot of friends that were into STEM educations in different universities where even they were trying to focus a little bit into the data space, it was either a minor or a little like you said, a blend of a computer science with a little touch of the data science and the data world a little bit. And that was one of the reasons why I really love the data space that we had within Florida Poly as well. Because I changed my major too many times, but let's not even count how many times. But at the end, I went from computer science to data analytics. And data analytics was its own group, its own very focused base. And I loved my last year because I was able to focus a lot on just data classes and the core of what data look like and literally what you mentioned, like programming languages like R, which a lot of my other friends, I either asked some of the classes they were taking, they were focused on programming languages, but I don't think any of them took art, to be honest, which is so fundamental depending on what kind of job you go into in the data space. So that is amazing. I love that you did that. And the organizations that you participated as well, they're awesome. The presidential ambassadors, I remember, was literally the group of people that were the main point of contact, I like to say, for the university as students, right? The sustainability one, I remember the garden. It was so cute. It was just a garden with all the vegetables and everything. And I used to work for the dorms at that point as well. And I remember all the students trying to build their own little garden at the window and trying to make sure they had some sun and lights. It was so cute. I love that. I love that you were part of just so many different things. And ended up finding something that you're passionate about and that you really liked. So that is awesome. And then you also got a master's degree at Florida Poly, but you went into, I don't want to say a very different space because there are some connections to it, but you went into the computer science world. So what made you transition from a data science undergrad to a computer science master's and not staying within the data space for that as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of overlap. There's always the joke that like data scientists know more computer science than your statisticians, and then like more statistics than your computer scientists. But it kind of followed what I had done for my career as well. So I worked kind of like full time as an intern actually for about the last year and a half of my schooling of my undergrad. So I was doing data science work for a company, and I ended up switching roles and ended up as a software engineer, but building data science tools. And this happened about at the same time as I was deciding to go into my master's. Let me think if I got that timeline right. No, so it would have been, I had started my master's and then I quickly, shortly after, swapped roles. So even as I was at Red Hat doing data sciencey work, I was in this machine learning operations space, which really sits at this intersection of I'm the one doing data science, I'm the one building models, but I also am going to be deploying them into containers in a cloud service. So it kind of felt like I have this first 80% of my job that I feel really quite good, as good as you can feel after just learning something in school and not being battle tested by the weird data out in the world. That I feel good about, but there's this 20% of more like DevOpsy software engineering part where I'm moving this model from my machine to somewhere in the cloud. And I felt like I need a little bit more information and schooling and what is a container type of thing from my master's degree. I also was lucky enough that Florida Poly gave me a really great scholarship, and I had just finished my undergrad, so I kind of figured I was already in the mode of working full time and doing full time school, and might as well keep going while I have the opportunity. Because I know once I leave, I'm probably not going to want to go back to school. So it kind of made sense for me to continue on just because I was such a software engineering focused data scientist. And it actually worked out super well because just a few months into my master's degree, I went full time as a software engineer where I don't do as much data science work anymore. So it worked out super well with what I was doing, kind of by accident, but also I think it was going to be useful for me regardless of what was happening.
Super understandable. And the comment that you made is so true because I graduated, went into the workforce, and I tried to go back to get a master's online. That did not really work for me. And literally right now in my life, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to go get a master's. But getting back to the groove of working and school, once you lost the groove for a little while, almost impossible, honestly. I have to find all this energy that I don't remember how I did it in college, honestly. In college, we're superhumans. We're working full time. We're going to school full time. We have all these extra activities. And now that I'm older and I've been out of college for a couple of years, I look back and I'm like, what kind of superhuman was I? Because I work full time. And if I think about anything else outside of working full time, to me, it's too much. It's just too much work, too many hours of the day. So I love that you did that, honestly. And I recommend that so much to people. I fully understand also the perspective of you study and you work so hard for so many years that a lot of people want to take that break, right? But I think that if getting a master's is something that you think it's going to help you move forward with your career path, learning something new, something that helps you, you have to just kind of do it right away. Just rip off the band-aid, get it done, and then you can fully take a breather afterwards without having to go back and forth into the mindset. I also love that you got an internship opportunity doing something completely different as well, or just doing data science work at first and then be able to jump into software engineer, which it is very focused and connected to the computer science world. So that is awesome. How was doing both things at the time? How was going to actually college full time and try to implement some of the classes that you're learning, where I feel like we only have the basic learnings and the basic skills, and then trying to fully figure it out that into your full-time internship and being a data scientist for real at that point, and then jumping into a software engineer, which is very, very different as well. So how was those transitions and how did you adapt to those?
Yeah, I think everything that I did really flowed nicely together. So I did my undergrad doing this internship and then being full-time and being data scientist role. And I had those data science chops and then saying, okay, I can do this master's as this is already getting a little more software engineering-y. Actually, I feel like made both sides of the equation, both my full-time job and my school, it built off of each other so nicely. I thought it was kind of surprising. I mean, maybe it shouldn't have been surprising because I was doing what I was going to school for, but it felt a really good balance for me of, oh, I get to implement what I learned in school in work or the other way around. And it made it feel a lot more applicable when I was going to classes and enjoying that experience of being a student. And I was able to do a little bit of data sciencey classes as well in my master's. You know, I wanted to really deep dive into X, Y, or Z. And I had the opportunity to do that. So they built off of each other so nicely that I think my master's degree was easier in some ways, which I guess, you know, when you're doing something 40 hours a week and then trying to apply that in a different way, it just comes a little bit more naturally. So I think it's not for the weak of heart, but I think it's so doable and a lot more rewarding and maybe not as hard as you think it'll be to go back to school. You can do it if you want. So I think like they build off each other so nicely, naturally, depending on what your degree program is, of course, and what you're doing at work.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's funny that you mentioned how you felt that your master's was, in a way, a little bit easier than undergrad. I think it could possibly also be because you were doing a job that was, in a way, already fully connected, right? So you're connecting the dots on both ways of learning and book reading and classes to the actual implementation of everything, which literally what you said, you just kind of balance each other out where you're learning the theory of things, but learning also the practice of it and bringing back to each other. I think that could for sure make things a little bit easier when you are studying because you are able to have that first-hand experience with implementing it. So that is awesome. And that is something honestly that you've been super lucky with of that connection of doing the job plus studying and learning that topic. I don't know anyone that had been through that before. For me, I know all of my internships were usually during summer. So I wasn't really doing classes, but you still trying to implement things. Or after I graduated, I went into a whole different career path completely outside of the scope of my degree. So there's a whole different side of things, but I love that you're able to kind of have the connection and implementation of both, which I think makes you grow so much faster in a way, in a sense of your knowledge and your experience. To me, it's kind of having the double of experience, right? Where you're just able to do both and you graduate already being an employee with actual work experience, but also being a student with the degrees. So that is awesome. That is so amazing. And then once you graduated your master's program, how was the transition a little bit from that to your first full-time role, no more school? Because I think to me that was a big shock of I always had dreams that something was missing and I will wake up and I'm like, okay, what homework is missing, what deadline, and nothing was missing. It was just we have free time at that point. But how was the transition a little bit from as soon as you graduated to your first full-time job without school?
Yeah, I know there is a little bit of like, what is it when people lose an arm and then they feel like the arm is still like, that's kind of what it feels like leaving school, especially when you've been there for so long. I got a bit of like phantom limb syndrome, but it feels nice because then you can say, you know, putting this part of my life away, whether it's for now, forever, whatever. And it kind of feels that's the first time in a while that you can have a personality that's just for you. I get to spend my free time doing what I want rather than homework, which honestly sometimes is fun. Not all the time, but sometimes is fun and entertaining. But really just being able to step back and take a deep breath of my whole life doesn't have to be data science right now. That you know, it was great for this, just like you said, it makes you grow and learn so fast when you're doing it 40 hours a week for work and then an extra however many for school. But it is, I don't think it's sustainable in the long haul. So I think it was really nice to be able to say, hey, I want to teach my dog tricks 2 days a week. And now I don't know, he doesn't really do anything interesting, but just being able to spend more time like with the community that I care about and you know, do stuff like this. Like this is fun. This is a different way of like learning and experiencing with people. that I feel at school, I'd be like, no, I have the midterm next week. I'm too stressed about this. Like, I think there's a lot of stress that has left my body now that I'm not full-time in school. So it is quite nice.
No, the free time is the best part, honestly. And it's why I'm struggling so hard when it comes to going back to a master's, because I think I've experienced the free time that you have and the flexibility that you have with, okay, you're done with work and you have all these hours to do anything. You can be your own person. Like I said, I literally think I became a whole nother person after college of trying to figure out who you are, what you actually like, what your hobbies are, what your passion, and not just having to think of, oh, the midterm and I have to study and I have homework and have all these things. It's awesome. And yeah, I'm struggling. I'm struggling having to think about 40 hours of work plus a lot of my time with school and classes and homework again, but we'll get there eventually. Fingers crossed right now. But I know also that you've had a lot of really cool experiences giving some different talks at different conferences. You've had some different volunteering experiences and other things that you're able to fulfill your time, that free time that you've had. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm always so curious with the conference talks. I think it's so hard for you to get in the middle of a huge group or a room and talk about a very interesting topic, but I love that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I have always, in my first job, in my current role, I've always worked in actually open source communities, which means a code that I write, you can literally Google it right now. You can see what I did today. So I think there's a level of openness that I've had to have. And I believe in open source because of the equity it brings to software and software engineering. I work with people on my team who have never gone to university or anything like that. They just learned how to code from everything that's online, which is mind boggling to me. But I think there's just such a community in the open source world that my first conference talk I actually gave, it was 5 minutes. It was online. It wasn't really a conference. It was just like a community meetup called Our Ladies, which is women and non-binary folks who just get together and talk about what they do in the R language. And so every year they have this big online thing and it's 5-minute talks. And that's what I did the first time around. And it was just so loving and supporting to see people who look like me, live in the same space as me. And I think that was the first time I was like, oh, this is fun. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's scary, but it's also fun. And being part of a community makes it feel so gratifying. So I kind of continued on. And even in my internship, I had a really great mentor. And she had pushed me. She's like, you should submit to this conference called DevConf. It's for developers. It's again remote. I think it was a pre-recorded talk, so it was pretty low stress. I had to do live Q&A, but the talk itself was pre-recorded. And once again, I think just trying to break stuff down, and it forces you to think more about your work as well. What can I talk about? And then I talked about model explainability and how we were using it or something like that. And it's interesting because if you like public speaking or even if you like teaching, there's such a good interlock of this is something that's interesting to me and I want to share with others. And then you start thinking of like, oh, now this has helped me out a lot because I can think of like, this maybe helps with my imposter syndrome of, these are things that I've done, I've worked on, and now I get to share it with the world and folks get to listen and it's on a resume, it's on whatever. And it's been interesting. There's been a lot of doors that have opened for me. I've been able to travel kind of across to Europe and stuff. And so it's nice to travel. I can do it in person. And it's really just been a really beautiful part of my journey in kind of an unexpected way. It's definitely a balance there of I still want to be someone who's very highly technical. I don't want to only be giving talks because that's what I prefer for my journey. But I think I love talking. I love telling stories. And so being able to share that with folks and connect with this community and just kind of be part of something. It's really interesting. And I think it's helped a lot, especially in my early career, to be able to point to things that it's not just a pet project showing off a few different skills beyond coding that I can communicate with others. And I think it set me apart, especially changing my first job, to be able to say, look, I've talked about machine learning operations before. So almost kind of if I think about the academic world where people will give a lot of publications or something like that, it's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio of street cred you can get from it. but I think it's been really helpful for me to be able to chat with folks, and it's good for network. It's really good for everything. I kind of feel like everybody should try to do it at least once. There's so many cool, interesting communities out there. And there's like really easy ways to get started. Yeah, I love it. I think it's a lot of fun.
That is something that I'm super interested in. I think I've always been very quiet, very shy, and working really hard the past like year to get out of my comfort zone as much as possible. And this is huge of me just kind of like putting my face and my voice out there. But it's something I've always felt extremely inspired by people that were able to do it because I think one of the main skill sets that people need to have is communication skills. And especially within our STEM and our tech world, is not a skill set that a lot of people have it really well, to be fairly honest. A lot of people prefer more of let me stay in my bubble, do the coding, do the work, and not fully communicate with others or have to have those conversations with like the business and the stakeholders. And I think you being a person that you work in STEM and you're able to have really good communication skills just makes you stand out 100%. When it comes to interviewing for other jobs, when it comes to fully be able to explain what you do as well, it's literally what you said. It makes you see things in a very different way. I only practice with my husband to be honest, but I always like to try to explain to him what I do, looking at him and be like, okay, let's act like you're a 10-year-old kid and I have to make this very easy and simple for you. How would I communicate it? Because there's a lot of topics that are so hard to explain and to talk about. So I always practice with him, honestly. He's my practice person. But I love it's just a skill set that I think everyone needs to have. It's super, super important, 100%. And all the extra things that you get from it, like the networking aspect of it, that's huge. And you put your name out there and give the opportunity to grow so much as well of people that are listening to your chats, people that are in the conferences online or in person. They're able to put a name to a face now, and then they're able to connect your knowledge and your areas of expertise to possible future opportunity as well. So everything just seems very positive, but I also think it takes someone with a lot of courage to get in the front of a room, right? And talk about it. And you've mentioned that you've done the online part of it, conferences, but also the in person. What are the main differences with the two that you've noticed so far?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So I feel like online, there's a couple different ways that conferences will do online stuff. You can actually normally tell when you're submitting an abstract, which is, I mean, I'll side note, another great way to prove that you can communicate. Even getting a talk accepted means that you're able to write something and solidify thoughts. But normally at that point in time, you'll know if it's a pre-recorded talk or not. And having the first things that first conferences I talked at be pre-recorded took so much stress off my shoulders. I would just hang out kind of like in a room like this. And then at the end, I could see all the questions that people were posting while they were watching the talk. And then I would just answer those. And so that made it a really easy on ramp. I mean, still, you do have to be a little bit brave, a little courageous, a little bit okay if you mess up the words. That's okay. That's just being a human. So I think that was an easy on ramp, but I do love being in person. I think there is just such a sense of connection, I guess, being able to see the people in the crowd, having people come up to you after and ask more questions or something like that. There's really just a powerful connection that feels a little bit more tangible when everybody is in 3 dimensions. But I've had good experiences doing both, or live streamed calls and stuff like that.
What are some things that you will say that someone needs to have, or different ways of practice or skills for when they're presenting in person? I know I hear everyone saying of like, oh, imagine everyone on their underwear or something, or stare at the wall and the back of the room. Those are the main two that I hear so often. And in my mind, I'm like, how in the world do I even do both? But what are some of the things that you recommend when someone is trying to do their presentation for the first time?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I always remind myself of is you are the expert on what you're talking about. Generally, you're talking about something you've built or a problem you solved or something like that. And you are the expert in the room on your project. Just because you don't have a PhD in AI or something like that, this is something that comes from you and you're the person up there speaking about it. And I think that's helped me from a lot of stage fright POV. You know, like this is my story. This is what I want to talk about. And people are generally very nice. And if people aren't nice to you, that's, you know, their problem, not yours. But I think being aware of the community that you're in as well, and making sure it aligns. Honestly, okay, the first talk I gave at this Art Ladies thing, I showed them all Python code, which is not the same language at all. And I had little snippets of like, okay, you can use this library instead in R or something, which is a little embarrassing to look back at of like, oops, I probably should have adjusted this for these folks. And even for something as silly as that, 5 minutes talking about this. People are super sweet, super invested. These are spaces that people are showing up because they want to learn and they want to learn from you. They read the abstract, they read your title, whatever. That's interesting to them. So I think just feeling empowered that people are in the room to hear about what you have to say. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel or be a rocket scientist. I've heard some of the best talks from people who are just like, y'all, we really messed up this pipeline this one time. I bet you've done something similar before. Here's how we fixed it. Here's how we made it better. So I think realizing that, you know, you bring value and you bring an interesting perspective, whether it's small, medium, or large contributions. I think it's really important, especially people who are just trying out speaking and being open about their work and stuff like that, that you can do it. Like you have interesting stories to tell and people want to hear them.
I think that's everything that I needed to hear
You're
for me
ready.
to be able to.
Let me know when you're giving your first conference talk. I'll be in the front row.
Honestly, I have been thinking so much about it, to be fairly honest. It's been in the back of my mind of just this whole communication aspect of it. And even the masters that I'm looking at, it's into like a strategic communication process where every single class is a different type of communication and communicating in a different space. So I have been so in my mind with the whole communication thing. So that's why I wanted to ask. And I haven't interviewed or talked to anyone that has actually done so many conferences, talks like you have in person and online, and the difference between. I think I will do some research, honestly, on kind of starting with the first step of, okay, doing an interview where you pre-record yourself and it's a pre-recorded thing, and then you just answer questions before you get in the room with a lot of people, which is okay. But that is amazing. I love the advice that you gave, especially the part that if you are there talking, you are the expert on the thing that you're mentioning, which I think is the biggest thing to me. I'm so scared of messing it up or talking about something and there's someone with more experience in the room or whatever the case may be. But it's what you said. If people are in the room, they are interested on your talk, on your topic, because they know beforehand what's going to be all about. And everyone is just there in a sense of just trying to learn. I've been through a lot of conferences as me participating, and I always love the people that are very new, honestly. That is just their first, second talk, and they're still nervous, and it just makes me relate to them so much more that I enjoy the talk so much more, which is funny. So to me, I'm like, wow, if I really like that and any kind of like conversations and topics where I'm able to relate to them, maybe people will like because they'll be able to relate to me. See, I never put the opposite perspective in my head, to be honest. Never until now. I'm like, wow, this just blew my mind. So that is amazing. I love that you've had the opportunity to do that. Are you looking into any other future conferences or talks to participate?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to be doing a couple more coming in December. Hi Ladies Con, which is another great community. If you're a Python developer or interested about Python, it's not just for people in data science. It's anybody who uses the language. There's always fun talks that are not super language oriented either. And I think it's all online, and I don't quote me on this, but I think it's free.
Mhm.
Or there's at least opportunities for super reduced options for students. And yeah, that's another hot tip. Pretty much every conference has a student discount, if not completely free. So wield your superpower if you have a university email or something like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's how I did it. Every single conference that I've done, it's either my company is sponsoring me, or I was in a university and the tickets are so cheap or free that you just have to go. You just have to go at that point. It's so worth it. It's amazing to network, and I'm so excited for you to be doing this next conference. Honestly, I'll for sure do more research about it. I'll try to add in the description of this episode as well all the information and links if people are interested in that. So that is super cool. And I know you also mentioned, as we've been talking about how some of the skill sets that you've learned with the conferences and the talks, they also have helped you to get to the job that you are right now. So how was that a little bit of, at what point did you make the decision of, okay, I've been a software engineer for this company for this amount of time, and it's time for me to try something new within another company? And how was that process?
Yeah, so it was a little bit, I call it my villain origin story. And I was working as this data scientist, software engineer, building these models, deploying these models. And the thing about working with cloud systems is that they're not necessarily built for somebody with data science experience a lot of the times. Sure, I know about scikit-learn and stuff, but I don't know how to be a cloud engineer. And it really felt like these MLOps tools. So MLOps is machine learning operations. It's generally when you have something on your laptop, you want to put it in the cloud to scale and everything like that. And I was realizing these tools don't feel like they're built for people like me, data scientists who have this set of skills. And I actually applied off of a tweet of somebody when Twitter was still a thing. I had followed someone. Her name's Julia Silge. She's my manager now, so I guess I'll spoil this story. But I saw she had posted, "Hey, we're looking for somebody with Python experience, with MLOps experience. We're trying to build MLOps tools." And I had followed Julia for a long time. She wrote the textbooks that I learned from in school. She's just an incredible human being and mentor for me. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to get this job or not, but at least I can say I talked to Julia. And
Mhm.
I think I've told her this story, so it shouldn't be embarrassing for me to tell her, but she knows. I'm sure she'll enjoy it. I went through the process and I talked about these tools aren't built for data scientists. There's a lot of pain points here, and I think we can fix it in X, Y, and Z. And so I got hired. I was actually Posit. It was called RStudio at the time. So that RStudio IDE I learned in college, I actually went to work for that company. And so I was part of this team of folks. I was their first Python open source hire. And now we've got a whole bunch of us. They've been building Python tools for a while. It's a longer story. But yeah, I got hired because I didn't like what tools I was using and I thought I could fix it. So that was my first project, was called the Vetiver project. Or Vetiver is this Python package, and there's an R package that Julia worked on. There's a Python package that I built. So it really felt like a natural extension of what I was
Mhm.
doing because I already knew the space. I knew what users were feeling when they were, moving from only have models on my machine. So it felt like a really kind of seamless experience where I could use a lot of my data science knowledge. But then I got to add in, my new skills from my computer science and software engineering type of classes, where I have to think about making things more modular and like portable. Just because this works on my machine, I need to make sure it works for other people's machines and other people's models. So it kind of just kept steamrolling from there. I was building these Python packages, and now I work on an IDE. So the place where you are doing your coding. So I work on that, building different features. We just did something that's converting filters and stuff in kind of a spreadsheet experience to code, which was something that was fun. So I still do a lot of engineering work, which has been great for me because I really do enjoy the coding aspect.
Wow, your story is so unique. I have never heard someone applying for a job because of a tweet before. So that is so new. Yeah, they don't have Twitter anymore. I think it's called something else, right?
Yeah,
There's a
X. I don't
name.
know. I don't use it. I'm on Blue
Yeah.
Sky for whatever that's worth.
That is so fun. I love that. See, people can get jobs anywhere. They can find jobs anywhere. You just have to sometimes, likely enough, follow someone that is super experienced, genius person that posted a job. So that is really cool. Okay, but besides the point, that one just got me super confused for a second. I was like, what's Twitter? So that is so cool. But I also love that you were able to see, okay, this is not working and this is a problem that we have within this company, and make it into a solution within your next role. Making it into, this is how I can actually fix an issue, and bring all the knowledge, all the experience they've had, mixing a little bit of both, right? Of the software engineering and the data science world into this next position, this next job, and working with someone that now is your manager, which is really cool. That has been someone super inspiring to you. I think those people are just amazing people for you to work for and to have as a mentor. And you just learn so much from them when it's someone that you really look up to. And you're like, wow, this person is amazing. I want to learn so much from them. That is so cool, honestly. That is awesome. How do you see, I guess, yourself moving forward from now? Like what kind of, if you had no limits, okay, there's no limits at all in anything in life, what kind of job or program or programming language, anything, what kind of job and work would you like to do next?
Ooh. So I am lucky and blessed enough to really enjoy what I do. I know there's often a strong pipeline of folks starting as engineers and data scientists and going on to managing, but I really enjoy being an IC or independent contributor. So I don't manage anyone, and I get to pick and choose my social interactions with conferences and such as I wish. So I would love to continue on this IC path. I think some people feel maybe pressured into doing other options. I'm lucky to be in a position where there's a clear path where I can continue growing by taking on things of a larger scope, going from more of a builder mode to architect mode. So maybe that as a point of future growth of just kind of taking on things on more scope. I am super interested in the language Rust. It is very hyped up in the open source, especially open source data science world. So if you think of R as kind of a language that people use specifically for statistics things, Python you use for everything. There's a joke about Python is the second best language for everything. And so Rust it's fast and it's a little bit lower level, but it is so much faster that there have been some really cool projects, things like polars and UV and TY, which are all just different open source projects, where using these tools is like literally hundreds of thousands or hundreds of times faster than pure Python thing. So I think looking into other languages, looking into other tools, I enjoy building tools a lot. I think it's a lot of fun to be able to especially build tools in the open. So I get to interact with people on GitHub. I get to talk to users who have actually used the code, which I know not everybody has that opportunity. But it's very gratifying to say, this person tried out this button or this whatever that I made and worked really well for this, but I want to fix this for them. So I really have a love for our users, and that's motivating for me. So I don't think that really answered your question at all, but that's what I'm thinking of for the next
No, you did
while.
100%. Because honestly, if you ask me back the question, I'll be all over the place. I'll give you 20 million different directions that I want to go to, and if you tell me which one, I don't know. So that is completely okay. It's where we are, right? When you have so many different interests and you want to do so many different things. The one cool thing that you did mention, which I do want to emphasize a lot, it's the pressure that a lot of us do have into the next step. I feel now that I've been working for about 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. Wow. Outside of graduating college, there is the big pressure of like, what's next, especially into, are you going to become a leader, a trainer, a manager? And in my mind, it's that big question of what if I don't want to? Right? What if I don't want to manage people? What if I don't want to lead people? I think there's a lot of companies that have that really big expectation. But at the same time, the company that I worked previously for, I worked at 3M right out of college. I really loved the mindset that they had, that there was two paths, right? When you are within the STEM world, I like to say, but there's a path of you can get to leading and managing people, or you can stay as an individual contributor and still grow and still go to the next step and the next step and the next step. It just depends on the path that you take. And there was a big opportunity there at that company of, okay, you want to stay technical, stay technical. You want to jump into management, jump into management. You want to go back to technical, you go back to technical, and never having to take a step back in a sense. And you can also lead as an individual contributor. You can lead different projects or different ideas or technologies. So it was a different mindset that I don't think a lot of companies have, that I really got from 3M, which was really good. And also the mindset that a lot of people don't have, right? What if you're just happy doing what you're doing now and that's what you want to do for a very long time? Like, that is okay. Why do people have to keep growing and right in their career path and always having to take the next thing and the next thing? why can't we just be happy doing what we like to do at work, even if it is to stay forever in the same position? I think, I don't know, it's just such a different mindset that we don't have. That I love to talk to people that kind of have the mindset a little bit like me of like, I love what I do now. I kind of want to stay here. And there's always room for growth and learning, right? Like you mentioned, the different programming languages you want to learn and the different experiences you want to have, but staying within your section and your job and your role as well. So I love that you brought that up because I think it's a whole different mindset and perspective that we don't talk about enough of if you love your job, okay, then you love your job and you stay doing your job, right? You don't have to change, you don't have to grow, you don't have to move, where that's not usually the expectation for people. So thank you for bringing that one up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting, just what you said, where people think I've done my 5 years as an engineer, now I have to be a manager. I'm like, no, I just want to be a better engineer. I think it's an interesting POV, and it's so great to hear that there are other companies out there that think that way.
Yeah.
And I think I don't foresee myself in a world where I moved to a role where that's not an option for me. Although I do think something that's interesting is the difference between product and people management. That's something that I don't think I learned about in college as much, where I thought all managers were taking in junior folks. And I recently, well, recently as in when I went to working on a real team, not in school, but learning that you can guide products as well as people. I feel like I would have loved to hear about that as well, just as a different path if that was something I wanted to take.
Oh, yeah. And the one thing that I'm learning literally now, which has been 6 years out of college, is you have project managers, you have product managers, you have program managers, and people managers, all the P's that you can possibly think of. And they all kind of look similar in some ways and very different in some other ways too. So I'm literally have been reading a lot and kind of just studying a lot into different perspectives because I love the world of, I guess, the PM world. It just, I don't know which the P options I want to go into, but the PM world is really cool. And then I'm just trying to identify and also learn. And it's something that no one talks about in college. One, no one talks about in college. Also, I think the perspective of what I do, right? I got a technical degree, but my first job was not technical, and every single job that I've had since college has not been technical. So there's also that opportunity of I do need to know the technical skills and the techno knowledge, and I do use data a lot within a lot of different projects, but it's not the main scope of my job, and that is okay too. That's another path that a lot of universities don't talk about, but also the growth, like you mentioned, of I don't have to manage people, I can manage a product, I can manage a project, the whole program, or whatever you want to manage. You can manage anything that you want. At this point, honestly, it's just a matter of like figuring it out and learning what that position will look like within your own scope of knowledge, within your own company, or were you very passionate about. That's something that, yeah, not a lot of people talk about companies or universities. I think it's something that is popping up a little bit more nowadays of, oh, being a product manager, a project manager than what it was a couple of years ago. So that is a really good point as well. And then for us to finalize the interview, I always like to kind of finalize with one little thing. So if you could look back at your younger self, whatever point of life it is, what are some things that you would tell her that you have learned so far as, within your years of experience, some advice that you give her?
I think, man, there's a lot of things I would tell her. But I think one of the main things is realizing where ego comes into play. I think I was recently reading a book and this kind of stuck with me that ego isn't there to make you confident, it's there to make you safe. I think a lot of times I was following something so I was like, "Oh, it's the safer path." Like and not realizing that that was my ego getting in the way. I thought I was just, like I want to build this skill, which in some ways that was a good skill to build, but sometimes it was at the expense of, choosing something that was going to be harder. And I think, yes, you want to be able to balance, giving yourself a reward of feeling good, but the growth doesn't come from when you're doing things that you're good at. Growth comes from when you're doing things you're bad at and failing and having to tell your manager you wrote a bug and being like, oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to fix it. But then it also gives you such a great opportunity to hear even the people who I look up to the most write bugs. So I think really trying to think about what I'm choosing for my next step. And is it because it's a safe choice or is it because it's something that's going to push me to grow? So it's tough line because sometimes you don't know which side you're on until you finish your task or whatever. But I think just doing it scared anyway, doing it even if it's uncomfortable, um, that would be probably my main advice.
I love that advice. That advice is something that I'm trying to stick in my mind nowadays. Honestly, I think I took a lot of safe options within life, to be honest. That's something I think I'm going through like a whole quarter life crisis or whatever it is. When you're getting close to your 30s, the life is just freaks out. It's the funniest thing. Every friend of mine that is like close to their 30s, we're all freaking out about life. But that's besides the point. I think that literally what you mentioned, there has been a lot of safe options that I've taken. And then I'm on the opposite end of things right now, where right now I'm like, if it feels safe, and I feel very comfortable, I'm not gonna do it. I'm actually gonna go and jump into whatever is actually scaring me, whatever is actually getting me out of my comfort zone. And I have been growing so much by doing so. So I love that advice. And I wish I would have had that advice honestly years ago, especially when right out of college, I think a lot of us play a lot of the safe roles and take the safe steps because everything is so new. Where if I look back, I wouldn't have done very differently, honestly. Don't regret any decisions, to be honest. I don't regret it because at that point it was the decision that I made, and you learn no matter what decision it is. You learn a lot from the safe choices and then the unsafe choices, right? But yeah, my approach is very different now. I'm like, it's safe and comfortable. Nope, it's a no for me. Next thing. I'm literally approaching everything the opposite way. So I love that advice, honestly.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I was just talking with other folks on my team pretty recently and talking about when do you start feeling confident in your job? Because I feel the first couple years you're so scared. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think if something hurts or is painful or awkward, like, doing it more because I think it wasn't until I realized living with the uncomfortable part was what sets somebody apart as a good engineer and a great one. If you always know what you're doing, you're probably not doing the most interesting things you could be. So I think looking back and realizing that being comfortable with that uncomfort is what truly makes you, honestly, I feel that's what cures your imposter syndrome at the end of the day when you're like, well, it's okay because nobody knows what they're doing ever. Who
Hmm.
made these pieces of metal think? What are we doing here?
Yep.
It is it is just a kind of a freeing moment that you probably won't get until you've failed 20 million times. And then, even then, it's not super helpful sometimes, but one day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and it's kind of funny. To me, the one thing that I've been doing a lot in seeing people that we look up to, right? So people with a lot of experience that in their mind you're like, oh, those people have so much confidence, they know exactly what's happening, they're so good at this. And then you having these deep conversations with them and they're just as lost in life as you. And just so lost at what they're doing in life too. And you're like, oh wow, so I'm looking up to you because you're super confident and you know exactly what you're doing, but you feel you don't, which is so funny because I think I feel the same way. I had a conversation too with some coworkers of I've been doing this kind of job for 6 years and I feel comfortable enough talking about it, explaining, going over, but I don't feel the level of confidence of I got this, right? Like, oh, people should come to me for this topic. I still don't feel that way. And just having conversations with a manager and like with a lot of experience on at what point do you feel that way? And some people say never, and you're like, oh wow, okay then we just move on in life and we go get challenges every single day because we're never gonna feel comfortable with 100% of what we're doing. So that is such a good point, and it's so funny because it's all of us, and that's what I love about these calls. We have calls like this, and you're like, oh wow, it's not just me; it's literally every single person out there. That's beautiful. You just feel closer to people in that way.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like it is very freeing to know that everybody is like that. And I think it's so important to have communities like this one or, other communities of practice to kind of have that connection, to just really help everybody feel more safe and secure and confident in their own work.
Mhm. No, I agree with that. That is awesome. No, I love that. I love the advice. I love everything that you've shared so far. You have such a unique life story on how you apply for a job with Twitter, which that to me is blowing my mind up until now, every second of it. And then just so cool how you apply for different colleges too, right from the beginning into so many different programs and slowly start finding your path and everything start connecting with your undergrad, with your internship opportunities, your masters, and everything just clicking like a whole puzzle. I think every single part of everything you've done so far, it's been a piece to this bigger puzzle of your life, and it's just kind of connecting perfectly. So that is awesome. But no, I just wanted to thank you again, honestly, for being part of this episode, for sharing your whole story. I'm so glad that I was able to have some time to talk to you. I know we've been meaning to have this conversation for so long already. I think that's kind of how it is with every conversation. But honestly, again, just thank you so much for all of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to be here, and it was so fun to chat and share my story and hear a little bit about yours and hear that nobody has it figured out and we're all in this together.
Honestly, no one. We're all lost and confused in life. Okay, let's put it that way. It doesn't matter where you're from, what age, what anything. We're all just trying to figure it out life and what's next and what's to come. But no, thank you again. Honestly, it was such a pleasure talking to you. And thank you everyone that has been listening to this episode. I'll have all of the details and every single link and conference and everything that we've shared so far, all linked in the description for you guys to explore some of these conference opportunities, these talk opportunities, and everything in between, honestly. Follow us on all of our social media as well. I've been posting a lot more frequently there too. And we're going to have a lot of amazing guests every other Tuesday here for you guys. So thank you so much for everyone listening too. And bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Yay!